Now I'm going to do a video which is a little bit different than what I've been doing. An explanation of how I run the channel, just to, if you're a new viewer. I follow what's in the news because that's what's going to get me hits. Otherwise it doesn't come up in the search engines. And then if I do a really, really good video having nothing to do with the news, it could get like 20 views, 100 views, in that range. And within a month, nothing else seems to happen. It just gets buried or disappeared, ignored. So that's the reason for me using the mainstream news topics as a springboard. It's not because I choose to do it that way, just because I'm facing the reality of the way the system works. Now, in the past, if you want to know the history of YouTube, it wasn't always like that. We could set the tone, we could set the agenda, as we did. And it's no longer like that. Even I'm not going to name any names, but there was a lot of other powerful forces in the beginning. And the game has changed now. So that's my explanation. I hope you won't take it as an excuse. Today is a little bit different though, because I just feel like talking about things that have been on my mind, stuff that I've been pondering for ages, like decades and more. And a commenter was watching one of my older videos. In fact, I didn't even click on the video, but I just recognized it. It was something about matriarchy and the way that society is structured. So I was talking about the gender differences, male versus female. So that's what the topic of this video, and I might ramble on for 10 minutes, maybe more, on that subject. And I guess I'm going to first try to unravel it and tell you basically how I try to think about things, especially one of these really, really deep subjects. Now, is that a helicopter? Experts can listen to the sound and say, oh no, that's a... Of course it's not a helicopter. There was a helicopter the other day that was really loud and close by. That's why I jumped to the assumption. So men and women, male and female, of the human species. Let me talk about that, because you can't help but wonder if you're a thinker, if you're a philosopher, if you're someone that's very curious. How did it get that way? And even going to so far as saying, why is it that way? Is that the only way it can be? Or will it eventually change? Will we evolve? Or, according to the theory and the assumption, will we evolve further? So that's a whole can of worms. We have the obvious differences of the present. Currently, let's take a look at the situation. All around us, there are people who are physically, obviously, a man or a woman. And we have proof positive in that, because proof is in the pudding. It takes a man and a woman to create another human being. That's called sexual reproduction. So otherwise known as love, otherwise within the institution of marriage, or at least a committed long-term relationship. But we have a lot of political movements now that are saying a man and a man can do it, or a female and a female, a woman and a woman. I would go so as far to say, as the next step is to say 3 people should be able to do it, or a human being and an animal. That's where it's going to go. People think it's crazy right now. Well, people thought it was crazy. It's, except the legal premise of a man and a man being together, or God forbid a woman and a woman. But today, it's totally accepted. This has been a I don't know if I want to call it an evolution of government policy, but it is a shift. It is a change. And I don't know why, other than to say that the winds of change are blowing, and they sometimes go that way. They go that way maybe unpredictably. Certainly it's something that would be hard to predict about 100 years ago. And what's going to be in 100 years from now in the future? It's really hard to say, except I just gave you this suggestion that when you make things more extreme about what a marriage is, and it could be anything, it doesn't have to be with 2, it could be with 3, 4. The possibilities are endless. Allow for the freedom of that. Isn't that the whole spirit of what's going on? The spirit of acceptance, liberality, the liberation of gender identity and the roles that we have to play. Well, all this factors in to my main source of pondering, or not just mine, but I think it would be everyone's universal, eternal question. What is it to be a human being? What is the human race? Is it a large group of sentient, organized, civilized men and women? Or there could be a third grouping, transgender, or the people that do not want to specify or settle on one gender. In the legal terms, the first person who has been accepted as non-female and non-male happened in a case in the state of Oregon. So look into that. It happened in June 2016, the same month as this is them talking. Very new. So some people may want to say, well, I don't have to establish the fact and accept that I'm a human being. And I could just say I am something else. Why not? But let's just try not to digress too much, even though I'm saying these things are so fascinating and all interwoven. The first thing is, what is it to be a man and what is it to be a woman? And how do they interrelate? Are they dependent on each other to be defined? I would say so. I would say so. And then you would have to say, well, what are the types of traits or a description that you would use to say this is a man and this is a woman? You would have to make a checklist. Some people have mixed traits. You could get confused. You might look and you look for, well, if you can't look down their pants, to use a colloquialism, just keep it in your pants, because of privacy issues, privacy rights. You can't just inspect down there just casually. You have to have some kind of a reason. You have to have a court order. You have to really have a reason. People will freely tell you what's there by saying, I'm a man. You know what's down there. And if they say they're a woman, you know what's down there. But those days are maybe passing because it's all in question. We don't know what's down there. People don't want you to know, or they're not even sure what that is. I'm not trying to make a joke. I'm saying that if someone has their private parts, their genitals, that is the primary sexual trait, gender trait. They may not use it for reproduction. They may never intend to do it with that. They may never intend to use it. Maybe it doesn't function. Maybe it's vestigial. So therefore, are they really male? Are they really female? Now, when it comes to the question of the secondary sexual traits, that's where we have a huge amount of conversation and question, which is cultural. It's a matter of personal choice. Like, take a look at my hair. Now, sometimes people would see me from the neck up, seeing just my head and my hairdo, and if the hair is all out, in different places of the world, they might look and say, "That's a woman with nice, long, flowing hair." Maybe I might do some braids or something, which I don't usually do, but just in case if I did, many people would assume, because of what they're used to and what is typical for secondary gender traits, to go for that assumption. Here's a female. But then when you come around to the front, there's hair on my face. And the hair on the face is also considered to be male. So then you're shocked, oh, well, okay, then it's a male. But in certain parts of the world, women do have facial hair, like the bearded woman at the circus. See how it's like an oddity, but in some places, it's a woman. In some places, women like a long, long beard. And do you know something? Look this up. There's historical evidence that in ancient Egypt, during certain dynasties, I couldn't tell you which one offhand, but you will see artistic depictions in the artifacts and the records from that time. You will see women, what they take to be women because of their dress style and are trying to identify who they are, they have beards. Now, whether or not these were fake, these were hair pieces like wigs attached to them, whether or not it was, the main point is that they were trying to appear to be male because of that secondary sexual trait. So, back to my question, the original preponderance, that what is it to be a male, what is it to be a female? You try to look the part. And people spend most of their life trying to do that. And for some of them, it's very difficult. And then we have to care about them, because if they emotionally struggle and they may become suicidal, the rest of us are supposed to care. We're supposed to say, oh, and have sympathy, have pity, get those people some help. Along comes therapy, along comes prescription drugs, psychiatry, along comes plastic surgery. We can help you. You don't feel like a man, you want to be a woman. All right, we can do some surgery, we can give you the hormonal doses, we can help your depression, and then you can go out and masquerade however you want. It's just like Halloween. Halloween, I did that. I'll tell you a personal story, my personal history. When I was about 10 years old, or maybe 9 years old, I don't remember the exact year, but I'm trying to pinpoint it just to be accurate for my biography. I went with a friend of mine. We dressed up as, I think I was basically a prostitute for Halloween that year. So back then I didn't have long hair. I had short hair as a young male, a boy, and I put on a wig, I put on a dress, I put on lipstick and makeup, basically like drag, a drag queen. And I went out. My friend also did the same, so we went around doing trick-or-treating that way for the whole night. So that's why I say masquerading, because I know what it's like to be masquerade in that sense, like artistically or as a performance. Other people take it very far. They want to do it day and night forevermore. So they go to drastic measures. They do something, a long-term change. But what I'm asking is, how do we get this idea of being male and female? Where did it begin? But I have two things to say before we explore that. How do we know anything in history was ever true? How do we know? Think about it. We don't know because we are not there right now. Time is linear, supposedly. We're not going to analyze time right now, but if this is the time of now, and we call it 2016, we haven't gotten to 2017 yet, but fresh in our memory is 2015 and so on and so forth, going all the way back as far as we can remember. Going back too far, though, we're not quite sure. I don't know if I should use recent news story, but I said I wouldn't go with the news today. Our memories get really faded, and it's not necessarily Alzheimer's. It's just the fact that we have so much to remember. We have a good short-term memory for the things that we need and the things that we're using, the facts, the information that are useful to us. And then the other things kind of get fuzzy. They get like phased out. They get pushed back into more long-term memory. And they might not be accessible, except maybe through hypnosis or a lot of effort, like tweaking the brain. My memory banks, where are they? And then oh yeah, I remember your childhood friend, or you have a reunion, or something just brings these memories out. What I'm saying is that history is very vague, and ultimately it's unprovable. Even though you have a bunch of evidence, like things that have defied the erosion of time, such as what we think humans can't do, because when they die, they die. But there are other things that can last, like a jar of honey, or a gold bar, or a painting that's been protected from the weather and the elements. Inanimate objects are the only evidence that we have. But what are they evidence of? That boils down to interpretation. And also, because there's so many foreign languages, we have to involve translation. So when you involve those two skills, those two processes, you are getting into a very confusing area. And it raises more questions than the questions that it answers. So when looking back on history, we find a group of things, inanimate objects, and we try to say, well, this is how these people were. We really don't know. It's all theoretical. Just like the major scientific area, which is called evolution, anthropology, archaeology. Prehistory is a mystery. It will always remain that way until we find a way to have more proof. Spiritual levels of thinking, which are not accepted by hard science, they're poo-pooed. But I would say that these are psychic mystical gifts. They need to be taken with a grain of salt. But some people talk about the Akashic record. The Akashic record is what we should know about history. It's the only thing. That is what it's called, the Akasha. That means whatever happens at any time of history in the world, it gets recorded on this substance called the Akasha. And when you can access these records, it tells you how it was. And it's not like text. It's not an inanimate object. It's like an energy field. So it's something of a more reliable material, but it's a non-material. That's the irony of it. It's not like a library where you go into the books and you look at pictures or text, the print on paper. It's not like that. It's more like you're seeing it with your spiritual eyes and your spiritual senses. It's like your soul or your spirit. It's basically your spirit, the unseen, invisible ghost that you are, has to access this record, the Akashic record. Then you say, well, then you just read it there and you're apt to believe it. Now, this is where psychics, true psychics or mystics, or all kinds of names for these people with these kinds of unusual gifts, unverifiable gifts also. So we return to the idea that history will remain a mystery, but we have theories that seem to present themselves and people gravitate towards them without any proof. They just say, oh, it's true, it's fact. Really, you're just in another belief system. Be honest with yourself. I am. You can see that I am. As intelligent as I might claim to be, as many books as I write, as many things as I absorb, and videos that I watch, like videos that are intelligible, I really still find that I can't answer any of these questions based on what's out there or what anybody says. Is that skepticism, Well, skepticism has led me to this because I use that process to not swallow the red pill or the blue pill, whatever the case may be. I didn't swallow any pill. I don't believe that's the way to find truth. So, oh, I like that. I like that lighting. Rays of light that spectrify into rainbow colors, because that's the lens. That is the sunlight. But if I can't know anything for sure from history about the male or female origin, what is the background of it? How did it get this way? We know that everything the way it is right now came from a source. We know that it descends from there. Those our ancestors are the ones that led us to what we are now. It's a continuum. But yet we know because of change, it wasn't always exactly this way. What are the changes? Were they superficial, just on the surface? And there's reality that you can never change. What did you make?
Awesome.
Is it good?
Yeah.
This is not hot tea. It's a.
Yeah, tasty.
Here, you want some?
Yeah, it's
I like
really
that.
tasty. I already had some.
My children just made this and are giving me some. They are giving me some.
Take a picture of this.
No, sorry. I'm not talking about machines, and I'm not talking about tea and herbalism right now. I'm talking about men and women, male and female of this human species. I'm sorry if I perplex you even more by saying that the questions can not be answered, but I think that is knowing something in itself, knowing that we can never fully answer it. There are some things we do know. I can spell it out. There are differences, definite differences between male and female, between men and women. It doesn't mean that you have to be either one. You can be undecided, you can be in between, you can be a mixture of both, and you can change it. That is also a true statement. That's the reality that we're in now because of technology, because of medical science, because of choices, because of culture. On the idea of the way society's been structured, whether it's been a matriarchy in the past or whether it's always been patriarchy, whether it's patriarchy now, whether it's matriarchy, is that just denial? Isn't there really a matriarchy going on? And because we haven't focused on it, because it's more subconscious, maybe it's under the surface, we act like it's not there. Women have just as much power, especially the mothers. The matriarchy is strong. Those for political gain, feminists or whoever they might be, want to claim that there's no matriarchy. Why are we living under a patriarchy? Why? Because of political offices are filled by men, or business executives are mostly men. Even though they're changing that now, there's still this cry that rings out louder and louder that the women don't have enough power. It's definitely a patriarchy. I don't know if there was any proof of that in the first place. Women have just as many things as they are in control of. And then there's another question. If I can't prove that essence, what do they need this kind of power for? What do men need this kind of power for? Is that the way patriarchy is? Oh, so the definition is that men have the power to make decisions, and men fill those seats, those offices, and make decisions for all the rest of us, and the women never have any say. Yeah, that would be the definition of patriarchy. Is that what's going on? Well, I tend to doubt it. Maybe you call me biased or sexist or male chauvinist, but it seems like for all the men that are described and recorded in history, even recent history, they always seem to have operated because of a influence of women. And some of them have influence from multiple powerful women in their lives. Take, for example, FDR, who was President Roosevelt, especially known because he ran the executive office during World War II. His mother was a very powerful figure. And you only have to study a little bit to find out this fact. His mother held the purse strings, especially after his father died, because there was a huge age difference between them. The father was much older and he did pass away, which is more predictable. And then following that, the mother had basically all the control over the state, the money, and had to give approval for everything before FDR would be able to do anything or to rest at ease. This is not a patriarchy. This is very matriarchal. He also is surrounded by many women, and his wife was a very powerful female and feminist in her own right. She's probably one of the earliest ones of that genre, Eleanor Roosevelt. She's fundamental in founding the United Nations. She did a lot of things. She was involved with the Equal Rights Amendment. She was involved with the suffragette movement. That's how they got the vote. All women, all adult women in the United States. So this is not a patriarchy. This is a matriarchy. And what about before all those things? Before civil rights, women's voting, before all that? George Washington, didn't he have a very powerful woman in his life? Look at the kings before that. King George, the one that they fought in the Revolutionary War. Look at other countries, other cultures. What I mean is that there's just a lot of information, even though nothing's proven, because history is always questionable. But there's a lot of information showing that women had their influence, they had their power. Maybe they didn't write it down because that wasn't their realm. They weren't supposed to do that culturally. As a woman, you didn't learn how to write. They do learn how to write now. Are they better off? Are we all better off just because we write? Yeah, kind of. It makes it interesting. I'm a writer. I write tons and tons of words. But could I live without it? Yeah. Actually, I see a future where I'm trying to get to the place where everything's more natural, more organic, and more pure. I'm with my family just about 24/7, folks, so I'm living under a matriarchy, basically. Even though I seem like I'm the one in charge. You see me a lot. You hear me, and I'm making decisions, and I'm running my life. I'm actually, since the beginning, when I was born, under a matriarchy. Going all the way back to my mother, teachers, all my elementary school teachers up until 6th grade were women. It goes on and on and on. You will find just as much evidence that I can personally remember and prove that women were making the decisions and putting the control onto my life. And I'm a male. So you have to say it's an equal mix. It's different, but both influences going on. Yin and yang, two sides, the opposites, are coming to harmony all the time. There's always this interplay, interaction, back and forth. This is just the start of the general premise. I could take this apart from many different angles, but this is what I had to say today. Thanks for listening.